REC Experience presents Real Estate, Entrepreneurship, Leadership with your host, Jazz Takhar. The REC Experience podcast is now on air.
Hey. Thanks for being in the REC Experience. I'm your host, Jazz Takhar, with your girl, Laura Elto Stewart. How you doing?
Hey, Jazz. How's it going?
I'm good.
I'm good, too.
I'm very excited.
Me, too. We have a highly esteemed woman on our podcast today.
I know we've been both wanting more women on our podcast. We're so excited. For the viewers that are watching, you obviously see a very familiar face with us. It's Manjit Minhas. How are you doing today, Manjit?
Thank you. I am good. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. So as both Laura and I were mentioning that we've been doing this podcast now for coming up to about 2 years.
Yep.
And we always find it tough to get more women entrepreneurs on. And so, we're very
excited. It's not that they're not out there.
Right. And not that we're not trying.
I get the feeling it has something to do with the video. I think sometimes there's a little bit more concern about hair and makeup and whatnot. So thank you. Thank you for coming on and showing all the other ladies that they can be brave and show their faces out there too.
No problem. You know, it's interesting. There are, like you say, a lot of women entrepreneurs out there, right? We're 51% of the population, and we definitely are at a faster rate starting businesses. But yes, it's interesting how COVID has actually, in some ways, given at least me a little more time because I'm not traveling, which I used to about 3 days a week. So I'm able to do a lot of things the last 6.5 months that I wasn't able to do before, as far as fitting it in my schedule and time slot. So this has been actually a really interesting time for me too. And I think a lot of female entrepreneurs to kind of venture out and try something new. And so I'm happy that you have invited me, and I'm happy to be here.
Manjit, I want to talk a little bit about everything that you're up to right now, what's exciting you. But before we get into that, can you take our viewers and listeners back a little? Like, how did you get started in the world of business? Obviously, we'll touch on what you do with Dragon's Den and all your experiences through that. But talk a little bit about how you got into the world of business.
Yeah, I think just like anything, it wasn't planned. Most entrepreneurs will tell you that wasn't their plan, or how it ended up wasn't the plan. It definitely wasn't my plan. I'm born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, which is where I'm coming from you today. And you know what? My parents, I'm first generation. My parents are from India. My dad came at 21, and my mom came at 9 years old to Vancouver, to Duncan, BC, actually, which is where my mom's family still is. And they moved to Calgary, because my dad's engineering degree wasn't recognized in Canada. And he decided he didn't want to work in a lumber mill like my grandfather and my uncles. And so he wanted to work as an engineer. So they ended up in Calgary, and they ended up here in 1977. He redid an engineering degree at the U of C. When he graduated in 1980, I was born, and a little bit later, my brother, but we won't talk about him.
He's not important right now.
And we had a typical middle-class upbringing. My dad worked for one of the largest oil companies in Calgary. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And you know what? When I graduated high school in 1998, if you're good in math and science in Calgary, especially, and I was made to be good in math and science. I purposely say made because I have 2 little girls myself, and I am making them be good in math and science. And if you are that in Calgary, you become an engineer and you work, or an accountant, and you work for oil patch because, that is where, up until maybe very shortly ago, that was where the jobs were at. That's where security is at. That is what my mom always, kind of enforced in me also, that you get the corner office, you get the pension, you work 9 to 5, and you make a good living, right? And that was the dream for me. So I applied, got into engineering at the U of C. I finished my first year and thought that it was pretty tough. And so I decided to take the summer off and not take courses. And so I decided that I'm going to try to work as an engineer. But very quickly, I discovered from a lot of rejection letters. Back then, they used to send you rejection letters actually in the mail when you didn't get your internship or get a job. Yeah.
Just telling you wasn't enough. They want to make sure you read it and saw it.
Right. They want to make sure they don't want you. Yeah. And so I then really had no opportunity too late to apply for courses. So I asked my dad for a job. And at that time, my parents had just had opened up a couple years before that private retail liquor stores in Calgary. They had three. They were three very successful stores in town. And my dad opened them and became an entrepreneur in 1994 because he was laid off from the oil patch, as there was a downturn in the oil patch in 94. And anybody who knows energy knows it goes up and down. We're in a down right now again, but it always goes back up. And so it was a downturn then also. And lucky for him, that was when Premier Ralph Klein privatized retail liquor industry in this province of Alberta. Still the only province.
Yeah, kudos.
We don't have that yet. Kudos to Alberta, because Ontario doesn't have that yet.
No other province does. 26 years later, Alberta was the only one who decided to do so and really become, progressive in thinking that the government should not be involved in selling alcohol to its citizens. So
I hope somebody at the LCBO is listening. Anyways, that's a different one.
I hope so too. But anyway, but you know what? So that's kind of not only like working there evenings, weekends, summers at the retail stores was where I got my knowledge about the alcohol business, but then also just became really involved in entrepreneurship and understanding what it takes, also selling and a lot of other things, right? And so I got a job at my dad's wholesale division at that time. I was tired of retail stocking shelves. And so I was taking orders from bars, restaurants, other liquor stores, hotels, all of their customers, giving their weekly delivery, weekly liquor order. And so, while I was doing that, a couple weeks into it, I thought to myself, the majority of the orders that come in for the weekly order from my dad's customers at that time were really what was called bar stock, which is the lowest priced, what they call EDLP, everyday low price, vodka, gin, whiskey, rye, the staples, right? Irish cream, tequila. And so I thought to myself, I've got an idea. And so one day over dinner back then, and I've started this now since we've been in COVID, because I was never home for dinner. But back then, we always used to assemble at 6 o'clock for family dinner. It was something that my dad was very adamant about. And I'm happy to finally bring it back in my own household with my own family. But it was really an important time for us always, because everybody, of course, was, in different directions. We were a small but close-knit family. And so one day over dinner, about, like I say, a couple weeks in, I said to my Dad, why don't you have private label spirits? That could be this win-win situation, that you sell your private label spirits that you make extra margin on, but it's your brand instead of selling other people's brands to your massive customers, which, and they were, like I say, very successful in the wholesale business at that time. And he said, interesting. I don't have the time or energy. Also, the laws don't allow me to do so, that I can't be wholesale and retailer or manufacturer and retailer. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to take that on. And I talked to my brother about it that night, and he said, yeah, interesting idea. And so started doing some research. He said, give me a business plan. Knew nothing about a business plan because I never took marketing or accounting courses in high school or in university. So I definitely embarked on learning a lot and coming up with a business plan. And we started as a whole private wholesale brand of spirits for my parents' liquor stores in 1999. And that's where we started. And, very quickly we discovered that there was something here and that there was market for it. And we did really, really well with our Irish cream. And still to this day, Blarney's Irish cream is the number 2 Irish cream in Western Canada, has been since then. And then after engineering, I decided to do it full time and not make it just a side hustle. And that's when we got into beer in 2003. And then really the world was at our oyster then, and things took off really then when me and my brother both then put both of our full-time energy and time and money into the business. and then started growing our portfolio, started expanding outside of Alberta to mainly the United States because it is an open market, and then slowly into Canada and an overseas market, and then got into manufacturing ourselves instead of getting it co-packed. And then just started opening other vertically integrated businesses, from trucking and transportation to glass blowing and decoration to graphic design to the list goes on and on. We do everything now except the farming portion. We leave creating the hops and the barley to the farmers.
To those professionals. Well, first and foremost, congratulations.
That's a short kind of recap.
First, well, congratulations on all the success. What I'm so intrigued by is that you're really implanting yourself in what I would assume is a fairly male-dominated industry. Can you talk to our listeners and viewers about some of the struggles you might have faced along the way?
Oh, yeah, definitely. A couple things. I never knew the liquor world was so, let's face it, old and white. and I had 3 notches against me before I started. Old, white, and male is what it was. And I was young, female, and brown. Okay, talk about the exact opposite as to what was in the industry and who I was facing and who was successful, most importantly. And you know what? When you're young, you're also naive to the fact that all of these things exist. I always was raised in my own mind to think that the world was fair. My parents used to tell me the opposite, that life wasn't fair. And I came to that harsh reality myself. But when you're young and you are naive, you really do think that the world is fair. I have a good product. I have, all the things going for me that I do with my business and my offering, and that it is going to work because, I just have a value proposition. And very quickly on, I discovered, people don't care as much about that to begin with, right? To get into the room, to get the meeting, to get buyers, to get governments in this country to pay attention was really, really hard. To not only get the meetings, but then once I did, they would be, talking to my brother or just taking it in one ear and out the other just to say that they could, and they did take it, so I couldn't complain, at least complain publicly. And so, a lot of time in my early years was definitely spent being very angry, being very upset, definitely more than a few tears in the car afterwards to say, what the hell was that? Like, they didn't even listen. They didn't have any questions. Like, many times they would just assume I would pour the beer and, leave. I was, the taster or the merchandiser, not the one that was actually the owner. So yes, a very uphill battle. And in some ways still is 20 years later. Let's face it, a lot of people still don't believe that what we have to offer, is what they need or is better than somebody who's been around for 100 years. But in the end of the day, I really do believe that, in the beginning, in all those really tough days and challenges and rumors and words that were used to my face and behind my back about who and what they thought we were, really helped me create a thick skin. And good or bad, it's really definitely something that toughened me up very, very.
Did it kind of put a chip on your shoulder too, so to speak, to kind of say, look, I'm going to prove these guys wrong. Like, I might be female, I might be a visible minority, but I'm going to show them in the end.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. I just thought of it, I'm not going to take no for an answer. Like, I'm just going to keep coming back. But yeah, like what they say or they do I'm not going to let it affect me. Not to say that I'm not human and I don't think of it for, a minute or two. Even now when I have Twitter trolls, I don't read any of it. But it's the same thing, right? And so I decided that I'm going to use those 3 things to my advantage. I'm going to stand out in the room whenever I get in the room or around that table, no matter what I do. So you know what? Let's stand out for the right reasons. And so, I decided I will always be the best research. Still am. I still am, the one with the most glitzy presentation. I'm the one on time. I'm the one that I've always felt that, if you look good, you feel good, and you're confident, and you deserve respect because you respect yourself. So all those things that we're taught that really don't take any money when you're starting, but just take a lot of effort. And I truly believe that that those things do count in first impressions, but also in long-term views. Because let's face it, we're all dealing with the same group of people for what in an industry forever and ever, right? They might move around from company to company or government to government or buyer to buyer. But in the end of the day, first impressions do count. Whether we all want to tell each other, don't judge a book by its cover, but we do. And so I think that it was important to me to be known and remembered over the months and the years for the right reasons.
You mentioned, and I'm not sure if the viewers and the listeners caught it, you said, not that you don't think about it for a minute or two. I spend a lot of my time on my personal content speaking about shutting out the noise. And what I mean by that is really shutting out the external noise, i.e. the news, maybe going on a news diet, because there's not really a lot of positivity that comes through the news channels, and even the internal noise within your head when you think that you're not good enough, or you're just not going to be capable of achieving something. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to think about it. But what you did, specifically what I heard, Manjit, and maybe you can just touch on it a little bit more, is that you didn't sulk in it. You didn't live in it. You got up and you continued doing something. So it's not, hey, like there's a pandemic happening right now at the time of this recording. It's happening. That doesn't mean that you have to live in it and sulk in it all day long.
Right. So that's a two-parter. So the first part on the personal side, yes, definitely. I do believe in constructive criticism. I do think that we all have to have people around us that we trust their opinion and their voice, because we're not all perfect. No matter how perfect I tell my husband I am, I definitely am not. And so you do have to have people around you that you trust that say, hey, maybe you should mold, or you should think about, or, you said that wrong or thought that wrong, and have healthy debate, right? I think that that's really important. Otherwise, our ego can get way too big and we can really just get caught up with ourselves and never be on that continuous learning journey. I have this motto to always be smarter by 1% before I go to bed. And I've had it for, oh my God, since I can remember, since I was a kid. And that means listening to others, talking to others, reading, whether it can be watching TV or in this new world, listening to podcasts, doing something that actually expands my own thinking and makes me learn something at the end of the day, because I don't know it all. And the world is changing so fast that you do have to have other outlets that you can learn from, and also form an opinion, an informed opinion, and know that that can change. But also know that there are things that you can be bold about yourself and be wrong about, or just not be wrong, but kind of, make mistakes at, and understand that you do need to evolve. And I think that, as far as the flip side, as far as the company goes and business goes, that is the exact same thing, in that you have to always be willing to look at opportunities, being willing to understand when you have to say no, and that you have to say no more often than you say yes, because you can drown yourself in opportunities. But I also believe that you have to be brave at sucking at something new. Also a personal motto, because for our company and my personal life, because you don't know it all. And if you stick to the same formula that has worked for you before, you will become irrelevant, I promise you. And so in pandemic times, all of a sudden we too had to think about, okay, who are we? What are we doing? Who is not only our customer base, but how are we helping our community in this time? Because it's tough. And a couple of weeks into the pandemic, we, with the help of some health authorities, we decided to go into making hand sanitizer. And we decided to be all in. We decided to put 4 of our distilleries on pause. And there's sacrifices in that too. Definitely, because all of a sudden, shelves at liquor stores would be running dry very quickly, because we only have so much warehouse stock.
And people were probably drinking more during that time too.
Well, nobody knew, right? Nobody knew how long this was going to last, what the ramifications were, where people's buying tendencies were going to stay or not, who was going to be deemed essential. Like, there were so many questions. But we decided that as an entrepreneur, very few times in your life do you get to actually help and be in an opportunity that our scale was actually something that the world needed right now, and especially Canadians. And so we decided to very quickly put ourselves all in time, money, energy. I work a lot, but I never worked as much as I did in March and April, learning a whole new business, making hand sanitizer. We thought we do it for a couple couple weeks, make 1 million bottles for health authorities that were asking us, frontline staff workers such as everybody at Safeway, Sobeys, Foodland, list goes on, transportation, truck drivers, all Amazon warehouses needed it for their staff function. I can go on and on at all the people that were asking us for it. And so I said, okay, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it big. And so we thought we'd make 1 million bottles and stop because this thing would be over called COVID.
Right.
But, well, we're 6 months in. We've made 13
thought this was going to last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I gave the whole team off 2 weeks. I let everybody go on vacation for 2 weeks.
And it's so, you never know, right? And we're 6 months in, we've made 13 million bottles and counting. And it's unbelievable that when you are an entrepreneur and a business owner, you have to not only outweigh, sacrifices and opportunities, but you do have to do what feels good in here. Right. And so I think that it is an important time to sometimes think, okay, some days, trust me, I'll be like, wow, what did we get ourselves into? But it's a journey nonetheless. And hopefully years down the road, I'll be able to talk about what we went through, not only as a company, but me as an individual, all the tough decisions as a leader that I had to make the last 6 months.
Well, we so appreciate you, helping to keep us all safe. So thank you for that. It sounds like you really, when you viewed with an obstacle, like you like to look at it more as an opportunity, which brings me to my next point. I'd like to kind of touch on how the opportunity of Dragon's Den came about, and perhaps more importantly, what you've learned from being on the show.
Yeah, so the origination story is not really that fantastic. So 6 years ago, it was a Thursday at the end of March. I was actually at my parents' house, and they live like literally down the road from me. And I was there, it was late afternoon, and the phone rang and I picked it up. And the news had just broke that there was 2 available seats on the Den. I was an avid viewer of the show, but also I know almost all of them beforehand. I think there was one dragon that I didn't know. Canada's a small world after all. And they'd all loved their experience. And like I say, it was late afternoon. I picked up the phone at my parents' house, and it was a producer from the show introducing himself. And he said that, you know what, we would love to have you. We've been following your story a long time. We would love to have you to come down to Toronto on Monday. This is a Thursday for a screen test because, we're looking to film the next season in a couple weeks, and we're looking for a couple new dragons. And I said, okay, thanks for the call, but that's kind of short notice in my world at that time. Before March, my world would book up a couple months in advance. And so I said, well, but also I thought to myself, yeah, I've always been behind the scenes, and media was something sure that we did. But it was like in newspapers, but not on TV, in my opinion, very different. I'd be talking about myself usually, right? And so I said, well, okay, thanks for the call, but I'll take your contact info down, but I don't think it's for me.
Wow.
And so I hung up the phone, and we were having dinner at my parents' house. My brother came in, and I was like, oh, I got this phone call. And at the end of the call, I said, how did you get my parents' phone number? He's like, oh, sorry, I didn't know this was your parents' number. But CBC Calgary had it in an archive somewhere. Wow. So obviously when I used to live at my parents' house, when we started our business somehow, somewhere, that phone number still existed. And thank goodness my parents never changed their phone number. and so over dinner, I said it to my brother and my dad, and because my mom had heard the conversation, and they were like, "Oh my God, I hope you said yes." And I said, I don't know, but there's no way I'm going. I was like, there's no way I'm going. I'm like, Ravinder, you're the face of the company. And at that point, he was for all those years. He was in all of our commercials, and that was purposeful. I was not one that, wanted to be in front of the camera. And so he said, are you crazy? You have to go. If nothing else, it's an experience, but you need to go not only for yourself, but for your girls and everybody else watching that show. And I said, well, yeah, but that's a lot of time and that I'd have to take away from not only family, because I have to move to Toronto for a month to film the show, and like all day, 11 hours you're filming. And I knew this from my past dragons, right? And what they went through to film the show. I'd have to step away from the business for that much time. Like just the logistics. And I had Yeah, very young girls. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I said, like, how would that happen? Like, there's it's just not plausible, right? And he said to me, well, okay, fine. You can say all the excuses that you want, but you're going to go for the screen test. And who knows, they might even say no to you and not want you. So this would be like a useless conversation anyway. And I said, okay, fine, I'll go. And so he got my assistant to book my flight, but unbeknown to me, because he knows me so well, that I would have gone to Toronto, but I probably wouldn't have gone to the screen test or the audition, right? And so I get to the airport on Sunday evening, and because it was first thing Monday, so I had to go Sunday night, and my dad shows up.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, Ravinder said that you will go. We know you, and you probably, there's a good chance you might not go actually to the CBC for the screen test. You like probably just work and then come back. Sure. And I said, yeah, maybe. And he said, well, okay, I'm coming to chaperone you. And I'm like, really? And he said, yeah, I am. Well, if I like, don't. I'm like, okay, fine. And so we went, and he did go down with me, and I showed up on Monday morning, and there were 12 other amazing Canadians there. And I thought to myself, okay, my dad just said one thing to me. He said, just be you, because if they take you, you know what, you're not an actress, and none of them are. And the most valuable thing that you could give to Canadians and other entrepreneurs is your opinion. And you have lots of them. Of course, he's my dad, so he knows that.
He knows.
He said, just be you. And I said, okay. And I said, okay, great. I will do that. I will just be me. And that also takes off all the pressure all of a sudden, right? That you're thinking about, like you'd said before, how do you look? How do you feel? Like as a woman, like there's all these things going on. I saw like all these other women there in the holding room that I'm like fangirling over, right? And so I'm just like, oh my God, like, oh, I should have wore this color. I should have worn, like all the things going through your head. And I said, okay. So I sat there 2 hours. They did 3 pitches and I came home. And 3 days later, they called me and they said, we have a chair for you if you are willing to come in 3.5 weeks to film. And I said, oh my God, okay, let me talk to my family and to my executives in the company. Like, I don't know how I'll make this work. And so as soon as I talked to everybody, both at home and at the office, they all said, yes, go, we will make this work. Wow. And they did. And so did I. I think that if you really want to do something, everybody around you, and you ask for help. And I've always believed in that. And everybody pitched in, and we didn't miss a beat. It was an amazing experience. It was interesting for the CBC too, to have, behind the scenes, because my 2 little girls, because everybody before me and currently has like adult children. So it was a very new experience, but it was a fun experience. But also I really did understand what my brother told me that evening over dinner, is that it was, for me to be on that show was a representation about what is possible, right? That this geeky engineer could have become in a cool, fun industry such as the beer industry, but also been successful on my own terms. Still, I could be on a show that is national, that being young, being Indian, with a name like Manjit that I wasn't going to change to something else, that I've been asked many times before. But also I could be me in that I could be as feminine, look like I wanted to look, unlike, they didn't, a whole nother story. They didn't wear a red dress. But I could become me, and that, yes, can be tough. That could be a mom, that could be a wife, that could be somebody that had religious and cultural values, that could be, a variety of things, not just in a box. And not saying that all the dragons before me were not themselves, but let's face it, they all kind of look the same. We're in the same age group, and had success in very similar ways. And so it's been an amazing experience, and I can't believe that it's been 6 years already for me. And we just filmed in the end of August, the 15th season, which was really incredible that we were able to. But it really, on a lot of fronts, has been an amazing experience for me to be involved in startups again. Because after 2 decades, not to say you get complacent, but that joy and that excitement of your first big sale and seeing it on the shelves or selling it to, who you dreamed of, or getting even the product on your kitchen table from, a piece of paper is so exciting. And I'm so thrilled that I can help entrepreneurs in this country do that for themselves, but also help bring new innovation to this country, but also just help them not make the same mistakes that I did, right? It's about guiding and coaching, and I think, and mentoring, because I truly believe that, great leaders, that they don't make followers, they create more leaders. And I truly believe that that is the blessed position that I'm in now, and that I'm happy to be able to give back time and money to others.
Now, if somebody's watching or listening, Manjit, and they want to pitch something to a dragon like yourself, what would be some advice you would give to them?
So somebody who sees thousands of pitches a year, not only in the den, but literally everywhere I go, is I would say very quickly, back in the day, and when I pitched, not knowing that it was a pitch to like potential suppliers and stuff 20 years ago, I came up with the idea, because there was no Dragon's Den back then. I came up with the idea myself to come up with a 5-minute pitch or story about who I am, and et cetera, et cetera. But now I would say, because most people, especially investors, listen to pitches all the time, you really need to get it down to 90 seconds and answer the basic 5 W's, right? Go back to what, because we're all human in the end of the day, and we are investing in you, not only the widget that you made or are wanting to make. And so it's about who you are, what you're doing, where you are, how you're going to do it, like the basics of not only a business, but about the insights. And you do have to touch a person with your personal story. And you have to do that quickly. You do have to have it refined because you don't get at people's attention, unfortunately, in this day and age very quickly. And first impressions do count. If you can get those first 90 seconds down, then after that, you can have a 10, 15-minute conversation. But you do have to get the really important points in and answer the quick 5 W's as to who and why I would want to be involved, where it is, like all of those basics, right? Which so many people miss. They start with, I'm looking for $100,000.
Yeah. I just had 20
Why?
people.
Who are you? How did this come about? Where? Why me? Like, how are you going to do this? Like, there's a lot of questions behind that.
Yeah.
So we definitely want to be respectful of your time. And we always like to close our podcast with your top tip. It can be from entrepreneurship, leadership, life lessons you've learned, or even from the liquor industry. What's your top tip for our listeners?
Oh my God, I never have one. That's a tough one. I do think that one of the foundations of my success is my ability to learn that I learned a long time ago and still am continuing to learn, is the art of negotiation. So I truly believe that all of us, we don't get what we deserve in life. We get what we negotiate. Meaning that, it's not a talent or a skill, the power of negotiation or persuasion, whatever you call it, that we are born with, any of us, or that many people talk about. It drives me nuts when, successful business people don't talk about how they were able to and how they made successful negotiations. And I truly believe that has been the starting point of my success. And it is something that I still take courses in person, online. I read a lot of books. I talk to others and actually pay a lot of attention to how they negotiate. Because whether you know it or not, you're doing it unconsciously all the time, in your personal life and in your business life. Hell, I was negotiating with my 8-year-old this morning on what to wear. I lost the negotiation, but at the end of the day,
it's win every time.
But we're doing it all the time, and you do have to learn that talent and skill. It is a skill, and so my advice would be: listen, everybody, no matter who you are and what you're doing, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, sign up, pick up a book, learn to negotiate, because it will last you a lifetime, and it will make you learn a lot about yourself, which I think is really important too, self-awareness as to what we're good at and what we're not so great at, right? And to fill those gaps as to where we're not good. But I do believe that it's really important. And also to understand that through even that process in everything that we do in life, a lot of people always ask me, well, how do you make good decisions as an entrepreneur? How do you make good decisions in your career path? Trust me, there is no formula for success on that one. I truly believe that good decisions come from experience And how do you get experience? For making bad decisions. Yeah. So you do have to, like I said early on, be brave at sucking at something new, meaning that you got to put yourself out there. You got to try new things, and you got to understand that if you don't try, you will never know. And I truly, truly believe that regret is forever, but failure is temporary. I can go on for 2 hours here, but all the failures that I've had as an entrepreneur in the last 20 years. But they haven't defined me. They have definitely taught me a lot. I have had to sacrifice for those failures, but they were my failures and I own them, right? But if I didn't jump into wine or do a lot of the other things that I've done, I would have thought about them forever and ever and ever about how I should have, could have, would have. But I did it and they didn't work out. So I can't regret not making those decisions. I don't believe in regret. So I believe in learning or being successful in different ways.
Manjit, thank you. And I'm so glad that you took your dad's advice and you did fly to Toronto. Not only fly to Toronto, but go to the studios down there in downtown Toronto. It really is a pleasure. Obviously, being Punjabi myself, it's nice. I got nieces. I got nephews as well. But for my 16-year-old niece, my 13-year-old niece, Laura has nieces as well. It's just so refreshing to see a different person on the screen of different color, and I appreciate it because my nieces have someone to look up to now because they also see someone like themselves on TV. And if you do come to Toronto, I don't know what your favorite sabji or dal is, but it is. We got amazing Indian restaurants here, but I'll obviously take you to my mom's home cooking. And whatever sabji you want.
Which is what I live off of too. I'm a vegetarian who doesn't cook. So definitely same thing here. What
sabji is here? Is there like saag and makki di roti or something? Or what?
Well, who can go wrong with that, right? Okay, yesterday I said to my mother-in-law, I feel like gobi wala paratha. And she's like, okay, coming up. So it's one of those things.
Is my mom's special. And so I was definitely, but in all
thank you. I really do appreciate that. I never set out then and still don't. I just, like I said, I always just try to be me, and I hope that in the positive ways it rubs off. I never think of myself as anybody who anybody should emulate in a lot of different ways, because I am not perfect by myself. But I do hope that a lot of, especially girls understand that you can be smart, and that means a lot of different things, and you don't only have to be a Bollywood actress or
I can't believe you didn't feel comfortable in front of the camera. I mean, you really wouldn't know that.
Yeah, never think that you were never in front of.
You were made for this.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think that comes over time, but that also becomes in being comfortable, not only in your own skin, in your own opinions, right? And I always joke with my brother, I give me on my opinions a lot, even at national radio, and every Wednesdays, and I always say to myself, I can say whatever I want and how I really think because nobody can fire me. So I think that makes a big difference too. If I worked for somebody else, I probably wouldn't be so cool. But I do think that is a really important fact to remember.
Is there a place where you wanted us to push our listeners and viewers to, like your Instagram or
anything? Yeah, just let us know.
Your website or.
Sounds good. Either way, all of my social medias are all, the same, and whatever works for you guys. Great. Right now there is, I'm sponsoring a female entrepreneurship with Startup Canada, up to $100,000 grant program. Right. And so, I didn't want to mention because it's over in a couple days, but if you guys wanted to tweet out or anything about that would be great, to help encourage females to apply, and because there is such less funding for women. And so just trying to focus on women during this time, because they do unfortunately have a lot more added responsibility during COVID, but a lot of new businesses are being born. I'm an optimist by personality. So I do think that we...
is there a website for that, Manjit? Like, how do we make a personal donation to it?
You can't. I've only made the donation. So it's just about getting women entrepreneurs to apply for the competition. And it's a competition just because that's how more people pay attention. And, we all know competitions do well when we get to vote and have our opinions on whether we like something or not. Hence, Dragon's Den does well for 15 years because we all sit on the sofa and say yes or no, I hate that, or I like that, or pick Manjit, or pick Jam, or pick nobody, walk out, kind of thing. So that's kind of
we can talk to you for hours, girl. I just want to get you off because I don't want your assistant to be upset at us and pissed off at us. So,
oh, don't worry, she's upset at me all the time, but that's all right.
So next time you come to Toronto, we would love to have you live. I know I would
love to. I don't know when that is, but hopefully sooner than later.
Once this all opens up again, I'm sure you'll be shooting another season. We're literally.
Oh, yes.
We're 15 minutes away from the studio that CBC downtown.
Oh, okay, great.
So we're at the Shops at Don Mills. It's not very far, and it's actually a very pleasant place to be. I think you'll like our little headquarters here as well. And so we would love to have you live. You're just a ball of energy. It's amazing.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care, guys. Have a good day. Bye.
This has been the REC Experience Podcast with Jazz Takhar, an REC Canada production.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching and listening. Please take a second right now to subscribe and follow us on whatever podcast platform you're watching or listening. It means the world to me. Thank you.